But I guess like for the audience, I think everyone's probably familiar with human design, but I know for me, I've only had like one big, long human design, like one-on-one reading, but it really did change my life because just understanding it's so intricate and scientific. And like, I felt so seen in that reading. I was just like, oh my God, like you're literally describing me. So, but maybe you can talk a little bit about like human design, just for people who might not be as familiar with it. And then if you can just talk about like gene keys and like what that is. Because I literally know nothing about that. So I'd love to talk more about that too. So maybe just like a little overview of human design and then what are gene keys, and we can really dive into that.
Yeah, absolutely. So human design, so they're both self-discovery or awareness tools. And so human design and gene keys are both built upon very sound scientific and theoretical concepts, right? So it kind of combines the art and the science piece, or sort of, you could say, the spirituality and the science, to really transform the way you see yourself or how you look at the world around you. Human design is more a system that says, here's how you're designed to work, right? Like if you have a blueprint to how you use your energy and how you exchange it with others, this is what that looks like. And that therefore, if you start to embody this, or not start to, but if you like let go of everything that's not you, and therefore you embody who you really are, you're going to experience less resistance in the world. You're going to be able to manifest things more easily, have relationships that are more, solid and fulfilling. And so it gives you kind of the ins and outs of how you work.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the gene keys goes hand in hand because it says, cool, like that's how you work. But we are also people built with this survival programming, right? We have fear at the forefront that on a nervous system level helps us survive. And you can be this person, like you can have this design of how to move through the world, but you're going to come up against these really natural human challenges of like facing things that are going to scare you or stop you or make you feel hindered based on your past conditioning, like the things that you learned were unsafe and safe growing up, but also just real world, challenges. And so human design gives you a tool to basically identify those very fears that you're more prone to being able to experience in your human experience, and even better, the higher expression of those fears. So when you see those fears popping up, how do you counteract them? How do you literally like almost neutralize them so that you're embodying a higher frequency, and therefore you're not only living into your design, but you're living into your design free from those fears, uninhibited by those fears. So the Gene Keys kind of gives you a whole language and a system and a roadmap to navigate from basically point A to, let's just say, point B on your map, but almost like with the challenges and roadblocks that you're going to face along the way. Like if you, I kind of like imagery. So if you think of like being at the base of a mountain and you're trying to reach the summit, instead of saying like, here's this path, right? Like winding path up the mountain, go this way. It says, here's the path, but also over here, you're going to hit like an avalanche section. So you might want to reroute to this way. And over here, you're going to come up against a fence. So you're going to have to jump it and then go over that. You know what I mean? So it kind of gives you the challenges that you're going to be predestined to face, and therefore how you can, again, further eliminate resistance and really own who you are and who you're here to be.
That's so cool. So wait, is it based on your birthday like human design is?
Yes. So you plug in your birth information based on the planetary alignment. So there are 64 different gene keys, which means that there are just 64 different archetypes of human behavior that we all embody. They're all in our DNA and our genetics based on human evolution. And so based on your birth information, the idea is that there are 11 of those 64 different patterns that are particularly prominent in your own design. Like these are the ones that are probably going to recur and come up and kind of cause you those challenges, but just because they're part of what's helping you evolve into who you're here to be. And so based on your birth information, you get like a roadmap of those 11 gene keys, and they give you, again, like a language through which to see the energetics showing up in your life and how to navigate them.
That's So cool. So like, what would be an example? Because again, I don't know anything about gene keys. If you're telling me about astrology and human design, I'll be like, okay, I can tell you what I am. I know all the things.
Totally.
But gene keys, I don't. So like, what would be an example? Like, what's your things that you work with so we can get an idea of like what it looks like?
Totally. So I think it'll be easy to, so first of all, when you see it, it'll be a little bit easier to understand. So if you're listening to this and you want to go type in genekeys.com/free-profile, you can just pull up your profile really quick. It's still going to look kind of like the way when you look at your human design profile for the first time.
Yeah,
it's like,
where you're
what
like,
the
what
hell is going on? Yeah. So it's still going to be like, wait, what? But it'll be at least put what I'm talking about into context. So every one of these gene keys has 3 words that goes with it. And the 3 words are called the shadow, the gift, and the city, meaning that in this archetype of human behavior, this is the shadow expression, which is fear-based, mind-oriented, keeping you limited. The city is the opposite of that. You can't embody both of them at the same time. So this is the highest frequency of that archetype of human behavior. And the way to get from that fear-based to that trust-based frequency, you go through the gift. So it's like the gift is that process of transformation, that very thing you need to actively work to embody so that you transform that fear into the higher expression, which scientifically I think is amazing because it's telling you how to rewire your neural pathways of fear, right?
Wait, this is so crazy. I just have to stop you for a second to tell you this crazy thing.
Yeah.
So right before this call, I was on a call with my group program, the Quantum Accelerator. Yeah. And I literally, and like what I do in that program is I channel like energetic upgrades and it's support and spiritual tools and stuff like that. So it's like how to work with your own energy. And one of my clients was talking about perfectionism. And literally what came through for me is exactly what you're talking about right now. And literally, I have no idea about gene keys, but what came through for me is how the perfectionism, and it could be anything. I'm just using perfectionism as an example. There is a higher expression of that, right? Which is why she's so good at what she does. Mm-hmm. And then there's a gift in that. I literally said these words. This is so weird. I literally said this. That there's a gift in that, and that all we really want to do in this is heal like the shadow expression of it, right? Which is like where it's holding her back or keeping her stuck or keeping her in fear around being not good enough, or like, what's underneath of the perfectionism, which is like needing external validation or feeling not good enough. But I literally use these words, which I haven't ever used.
Wow.
So
I mean, you were channeling the connection.
I was like channeling this conversation. Like, this is so crazy, which also leads me to feel like I really need to go deeper with this. So, I definitely want to do that. But
yeah, no, clearly you're on some wavelength with the gene keys right now.
Oh my God, that's crazy. Okay. So keep going. So what would be an example of like one of the things?
Yeah, well, let's even like tie in what you were just talking about. So, because this will kind of really ground it. So yes, we face things and patterns all the time that limit us, right? So let's take perfectionism, which, as you were saying, underneath that could be the external validation, XYZ, which is always coming underneath all of that. It's always coming from fear, right?
Totally.
Perfectionism is driven by fear. Overcompensation or people pleasing is driven by fear. Like all of our shadow patterns are driven by fear. Okay.
100%.
So the Gene Keys has like all these different words for the way that those fears can show up in the human experience. So, or kind of like what the drivers are, right? So we have perfectionism, which is the behavior and the acts. And so you could take the 29th Gene Key, which is the shadow of half-heartedness, for example, or an even better one, actually. Let's take a different one. An even better one that could explain this is the shadow of failure, right? Because a lot of what drives people who have perfectionist behavior is actually a fear of failure, right? A fear of not living up to some expectation because then they're not good enough, worthy enough, X, Y, Z.
Exactly.
So what we would, what you would look at is like seeing, okay, the shadow of failure comes from this deep-rooted fear, right? Of needing to live up to some sort of expectations that our mind sets, right?
Mhm.
It's not even real. It's
No.
something that we picked up or it came from somewhere else. And so you could see that the perfectionism is being driven by that. The gift, the way of basically like transforming that failure into a higher expression is through the gift of preservation. And so what does that mean? The gift of preservation through the gene keys means that like when you are able to get out of your mind and actually look at what matters and what doesn't matter, right? You're kind of dropping those expectations. You're detaching from the things that you've picked up. You're able to actually preserve like and really get a sense of how to move through the world and how you're best able to show up again on your accord, on your terms. And so it becomes a lot easier to sort of navigate what's coming from you and what's not coming from you, which is really the way to kind of dismantle the whole even notion of fear, right? Because then you're able to be like, and the other thing that like really roots the preservation down is that whole concept that we hear all the time that failure our mistakes are always valuable because they're providing us information that then sends us where we need to go next. So the gift is being able to preserve, like look at your quote unquote failures or look at those missteps and say, where did this lead me next? Or where is this asking me to go? Or what am I taking from this that's informing my next decision? So you become this really masterful, preserver of like the actual information that matters and the ability to kind of see through the notion or the illusion of fear, if that makes sense.